have one question about reinspection fees. Our projected is at 40,000, and then yet we halved it for 2019. I'm just wondering what since the actuals are 40, what do we see as decreasing?
Well, this year was an abnormally active season.
It's reinspection though, right?
It's reinspection PE, which is property enforcement. So, and then I will review with planning director whether he sees that being impacted further by staffing level adjustments for 2019.
Okay.
Alrighty, other public safety.
862. These are your big contracts for services.
I think Mike brought up the rent credit. I'm not sure we need to budget the entire year of not having rent. I mean, I don't, when would construction probably won't start till next summer. I mean,
We're shooting for, just to be clear, and before the end of the year, having an agreement in place with them. If that's the board's will and you want, everyone feels comfortable voting it, before the end of the year. And so with that, the agreement would specify rent, whether we sell or keep or whatever, and if rent is going to go away, it's gonna go away by January 1st.
Right, once the property changes.
Once you
And it's still
But that means
a
we would-
wrap-up item because, I mean, there's still time between now and then to see if any additional information comes up, but
Is available, right?
Yeah, that's
I just don't, I mean, the sale price, the only reason I say that is it wouldn't show up in this line, so say we had a sale, then it would be in capital.
right, but I mean, even if we have an agreement by the end of the year, let's say we're gonna keep it and they go somewhere else while we redo the building, I mean, that probably isn't gonna start for at least, I mean, we have to architect it and get drawings and bid it out and everything, so I mean, there's several months before they would be vacating, and then they come back and we're renting to them again, so I mean, I don't know, yeah.
I recommend that the board revisit this after we have an opportunity to discuss the negotiations in closed session for our first meeting in October, for purposes of time.
Okay, that's fine.
I have a question about lifeguards.
Me too, yeah.
So do you have the actuals that I asked for, meaning the actual hours that they spent at last meeting?
No, we don't have that report yet.
Then can I put it on the list, because we signed a I think I mentioned this last time, I don't remember.
Utilization, a different utilization factor, like by the hour rather than.
I'd like to know how many times they really needed the 3 lifeguards. I mean, we were gonna pay it in a lump sum anyways, but it would make sense so we can estimate better. Like, even with the new utilization, we could see how many lifeguards were needed at certain times based on their wage sheet.
Yeah, I
I
can probably
was-
get that.
I was gonna suggest we reduce lifeguards back to 17,000, and
Go up to bid.
if we go out to bid, and if we have to reduce the amount of time that we have lifeguards, and we have to, I mean, it's regrettable, but,
I think we can get there, and if we get the information, I think it'll be helpful. But I would support that, I just think, unless the information came back and they had 3 lifeguards, the entire, like, if it showed there was that big need, I would need to question it.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I actually have a question about crossing guards. I know we had a lot of discussion when we signed the crossing guards contract about having the school district own that contract. Is this a time where we can, because I think we were really up against a wall, we didn't want to not have crossing guards, but is this a time where we can move that over to the school district and let them own that contract? And, I mean, how can we make that happen so we don't get to, late August and have a crossing guard situation?
Yeah,
I think it was in the memo we got from.
or the answers to my
Yeah.
questions. The short answer from what I take is they're on a 6-month different budget cycle.
They just adopted their budget.
However, what Appleton does is they loan it to them. So even though, in other words, I don't know the
The
mechanics, I know we're
municipal
meeting
owns
with Peru and Dr. Davis this week.
The municipality of Appleton loans it to their
Yes,
school
because
district?
they're always, whenever they make agreements on services, their schedules are always off for budgeting.
Mhm.
And so they make an internal agreement on how that's that's gonna happen, like, so that they can front the money, and we're cash happy at the beginning, and we're cash poor at the end, so we have enough money to float them.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so the thing that I'm sort of challenged on is, one, I think that they should own it. And I don't wanna get to that same place where we were in late August, but I also think there's a lot of issues already this year with crossing guards, so, from what I've heard from residents. And so I wanna make sure, since we're not really the end users, that the school district is able to own this contract, and whether the logistics of it are that we float some money for them to make that happen, I'm fine with that, but I just think that the school district needs to own it, and we need to make that
But we signed it.
for this year, yes.
It's
It's a multi-year
2018
agreement.
multi-year.
Oh, 2018, 2020 to 2019. Well, I mean, I guess, the question I'm asking is, how do we make that transition?
I know.
It goes to the end of June of 19
Mm-hmm,
for the school.
right.
So yes, then we could make that change at that point. Or you can at least talk about it now,
Right.
so they know in June what the change is going to be.
Right, so we don't get to August.
So it's a 73,000 for a 9-month contract?
Mhm.
That's
Oh, no,
not-
they have a couple during the summer, I
Yeah.
think there's one or two, one?
They don't have any.
It's a
Yeah, they do.
12-month contract.
Yeah.
I'd have to review the contract terms,
Oh,
but
because there's no school.
I think the,
Yeah.
But it's the summer
It's-
rec.
Yeah,
it's the two issues here is, one, somebody wants to convince the school to take over the contract. I think we can work at that administratively. And then the second is fiscal support for that, how to reach an understanding if we want to change the nature of that. But I say we can loan them, in the midst of some transitionary cycle. I've seen that done as well.
But for the purposes, to trustee Carpenter's point, is there a way to eliminate this line item from this 2019 budget? Or are we already committed, and so this would be, we're really talking about 2020?
You
This
could-
goes through-
you
Well,
could
it would be
cut
from-
You could cut it in half.
Right, I mean, because we could do
If-
anything after June.
If
or-
you, whatever your decision is to be made, if you choose to end the contract in June 2019, then that remaining funds, the 73,000 would ultimately, I don't hold me on it, but 35,000 for the first half of the year,
I see.
35 for the second half. So you'd cut it in half if you made that adjustment to where the school district would pay for it.
It's a pretty strong statement.
We own half of the year. We own till June.
I would say that I'm more in favor of, historically, it has not been the practice for one entity to just make a unilateral decision and then inform another entity. Usually we have more of a collaboration. So I would prefer that. I mean, I support, I prefer that. I think it works better for all the initiatives that we have that we're partners on. But that said, if that's the will of the board, that's the will of the board, and I guess we could take that, we could have that decision-making mechanism as part of this budget moving forward,
I think-
and then that would free up those funds, technically.
Are you asking, go ahead, are you
I mean,
asking?
I fully agree with what you're saying, Trustee McCaig. I think my other challenge is that it hasn't felt very collaborative, at least from my
Right,
time on the
good
board.
point, good
That
point.
nobody's been to any of the meetings to talk
Good
about
point.
that,
Not fair.
what are the end users hearing, what is,
Yes.
I mean, cause I'm hearing that just from casual conversation.
That's really, I
And
appreciate
so,
that.
I think collaboration works in both directions.
True, yeah. And I'm resting on a historical collaboration, and that's a really good reality check of like,
Yeah.
where's the face-to-face?
Right.
So is the next step here to reach out and to just kind of
So
talk to them?
Rebecca and I, they reached out to us, and they asked us, just based on their facilities planning, we have not, been briefed or anything like that, as a village, and so they asked us if we just come and meet with them. We don't really have a certain topic, right? But my intent was I was gonna bring something up, just because we are headed into budget, and, get a feel, and then maybe we can meet as both boards, but again, we just haven't had that initial even, I don't know if you have, but. But they've reached out to us, so I'm
I
hoping
mean,
that that
I'd
would
like
be.
to add to that agenda that, in the DPW budget, there's
Trash.
about $16,000 that we subsidize the schools on trash and recycling. So I think we need to, of course, we hold elections in the schools, I mean, it kind of goes both ways, and we sort of share, rec facilities, so, I mean, there's things we share, there's things they do for us, and there's things we do for them,
Yeah.
you know,
Of course,
so.
I think we just have a conversation about
Yeah.
that as boards
Yeah.
together. The other option, I just wanna throw it out there as a middle ground, so if other places I did ask around, other municipalities split the crossing guard contract, half and half, so the school does it, but they pay half, so that's a collaborative effort still. So if we wanted to start small, and then you would reduce that line item by a fourth, right? Because you'd be paying 100% through June, 50%.
For 2019.
Okay, can I just
Yeah,
ask
just
for budget, is there, do we put it on the list and possibly change the budget or not? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
that's
kinda
what-
up in the air.
Well, I can certainly put it on the list, but I don't think it would be appropriate to change the budget until you have an MOU between the school district and the village on what that course of action will be
More
going
agreement,
forward.
maybe, just.
Because quite honestly, the school board could dismiss the board's good intentions on that, and then the board would be in a position of having a contract, and having decided whether to execute that or to cease school guards, crossing guards, so, that'd just be my recommendation.
Yep. I'm
Yeah, I
okay
think,
with that.
yeah, I think it needs to be on the list.
Well, it's on the list, I've got
I
it
mean,
on
we're
already.
probably not gonna have a chance to have both boards meet together and actually make any decisions on this before October 22nd, so I just.
We may have a good direction of feeling, I mean, they may just be like, yeah, that sounds fun, I doubt it, but I'm just saying, we may. I guess I know.
I'll add some stuff
We
in
need some
there.
different fire department.
Take over the $70,000 contract.
Right, and your point is, it probably wouldn't count towards recovering. Towards the gap.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure there's, well, let's put it on the list and see if there's a development, I don't know, but.
What's the school board levy cycle or budget cycle, are they already, when do they approve
They
their?
adopt their at the annual meeting, which is at the end of August, is when their budget is formally adopted.
For the
And they did the
upcoming
Or
whole.
September.
calendar year?
Yeah, no, for the
June next
school
year?
year.
The school year.
Oh, on the school, year. So they'll be looking at mid-2019
August.
in August. But they'll be doing their planning
No,
and
yeah,
stuff.
they're doing
Right now,
their
now
budget
would be
is
their
like,
time.
I think they start budgeting like in the spring,
Right,
and, you
yeah, so they'll
know.
have time.
Yeah.
They
This is a
get,
good
That
time to
actually
have that
be- yeah, I think-
conversation.
yeah, it'd be
they
a perfect
get,
time.
they
to
get
see
like,
if they
they get
can-
preliminary
I see.
numbers from the
Right.
state,
Yeah.
and they're doing their,
Right.
you know, they can just retire a little less debt next year, that's all, it won't be a big deal. Okay, do we have anything else on other public safety?
North Shore Fire Department, we solidified that budget at 2% increase, at the last meeting, last week. And I'm just wondering, is that what's included on page 63, under North Shore Fire Department?
No, that's at a 2.5, we will update that in budget wrap-up,
Okay, how
Okay.
much does that get us?
What do you
Yeah.
think? What's a
like
five?
$8,000 or something.
That's all?
Thank you, North Shore.
We'll
On the,
take it.
on that 2.269 million number?
Again, I've got notes in my office on all the updates that come up post preliminary budget. I can give you an update on that specifically, you know, I know it's a number of interests, I'd be happy to do that.
I mean, 1% would be,
10,733 is it,
that's all.
yeah.
No,
No, still, it's huge.
it's still,
It's still,
still moving the needle.
Well, 1% is 22,000 of that total number. Oh, so half
Right,
percent
so
is
half
10,
percent is
yeah,
10,
okay,
yeah.
well, that's good.
Yeah. And then focus on-
Amend
We
that.
covered 10.
Okay, yeah, we
Yeah.
got 10, yeah, okay. Anything else? All right, DPW.
Christina, would it be okay if we went around and people could say who they are? There are a lot of faces here, I don't know, not that we would take comment at this time, but I'm just curious what people came for. I mean, the staff I know, obviously.
Okay, sure, why not just?
I don't know all this
I
stuff.
was
My
like,
name is
I
Rob Yenser, and I work for the DPW on utilities equipment operator. Road clerk, DPW, and road collector.
I didn't recognize you off the truck. I knew you looked familiar.
Uh-oh.
I'm Ben Lamarnick, I'm, work for the DPW, I'm the horticulturist slash forester.
Welcome, you're new, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
As of a year?
February I started.
You're Judy's replacement.
Yeah, you're the new Judy.
Judy is the old
Might-
Ben.
Yeah.
Eric Anderson, building maintenance, DPW.
Oh, not you.
New Erica.
No, we know them.
Dave Quincy, utility foreman, utilities. Josh was their equipment operator.
Well, we're impressed you guys wanted to come here and be so bored.
It's interesting.
Okay. So I had a question about the salaries total, 2018 adopted to projected. Why the salary line item has been coming up so much larger than what the adopted budget was for 18?
Can you just say which page?
They were over.
It's on page 65. I mean, it's basically,
Oh, it's the totals.
it's a total, but it's basically in one of the divisions. It's basically in, collections, refuse recycling, 35,000.
Well, just to that specific item, I mean, we did have to do some staff coverage throughout the year for staff who was unable to perform their duties. So that drew more funds into that area as we paid staff member who was not working and that had to be substituted hours. And then you got, again, within public works in general, that includes both water and sewer utility wages as well. So again, as the specific workload of the year unfolds, you know, those wages will be assigned to the work area that the services are actually being provided, and that can also shift a little bit more than anticipated from water or sewer utility into the general DPW budget. And specifically, the 2018 budget had anticipated a lot higher service level in the maintenance of meters area in anticipation of starting to launch the AMI process, and that has been not yet implemented. So as a result, that time isn't needed in the water and is being spent on other general public works activities.
So when did we get the new trucks, garbage trucks?
Was January, I think.
So we started
Joel?
the new collection protocol in
Usually
January.
start that until early March, I believe.
Is that when the cards got delivered? Is that when we
Right.
started it?
Correct.
Okay.
No, I'm not talking about recycling, I'm talking about garbage. So March.
Yeah, but we kind of rolled that all out together at the same time as with the new cards.
I thought we did garbage first.
I mean, part of that was changing our routes and our garbage routes. At the same time, we kind of rolled out the recycling carts and everything, so.
Because we were told that there would be, some savings, there'd be less time that would be needed for refuse collection due to having the new trucks, but it doesn't seem like that is showing, because I don't know, it's hard to tell, because there's, like, Mark was saying, there's coverage for someone who's out, so it's hard to know what the.
Well, let me say it a
Did they
different
answer
way.
the question?
Oh,
I think there's a couple of factors at work there. One is that there was a little bit of a learning curve on those automated trucks, so that time savings wasn't instantaneous. You know, it took a couple months for the guys to be comfortable using the trucks, and then also, I mean, it is a bit of a work in progress, to make sure that the residents understand that proper placement of the carts is really the critical factor in achieving that time savings. If the collectors still have to get out of the trucks to get the carts or to move the carts so that the arm can reach them because they're next to a light pole
or a street tree or anything like that, that obviously impacts the time. So there's a little bit of a learning curve on both ends of that. We've had a lot of turnover, as you know, in the last year, 18 months. And a lot of that time falls into collections. So our collection hours are over what we would have projected. Part of it is just training new employees. Every time we hire a new employee, they're trained on all 3 of the garbage routes because, we have to be pretty interchangeable. Refuse collection is something that has to be done every day. I know that's on the to-do list, that's the first thing that gets ticked off. So if we have a collector on vacation or a collector injured or out for whatever reason, a replacement has to be pulled from some other division. So everyone has to understand that process and know how to run each of those 3 routes. So every time we get a new employee, we're doubling up, we're training that person on collections. So that increases the hours in collections this year. And then we did have a gentleman who has since resigned, who was on a workers' comp issue, who was a route collector. And the way that our processes work and have historically is that workman's comp time is paid through the collections division. Then we're also paying his substitute driver from that same collections division. So we had a lot of months where we double up on hours.
Well, I get that, but then for 2019, I mean, we're at 120 in salaries versus, 113 in 17 and 110 in 16, so we're actually more than we were before. And let me ask this question: is the reason that the salaries, is it an allocation issue because more of the salaries are being allocated here as opposed to the utilities, or is it actually reflective of the time? Because we were sort of expecting it to go the other way.
I tend to say it's probably an allocation tweak that I could make.
That'd be
But
great.
whatever I do is a zero-sum game, so I'm just,
Well, but we allocate for a reason, right? And you do that exercise every year. And so if, it would help us understand if for instance, there's less time, needed here, but there's more time that, you said we're not gonna lay off people, so if they're gonna shift to do something else that's a high priority, like forestry or building maintenance, which is fine with us, then we have a better way to gauge that for the following budget, for the next budget. Like it would be an
so I
allocation.
can put more time in building maintenance, I can do that.
I don't know what the answer is. I mean, Liam would probably know
Well,
where that time would shift
We're
to.
really just